Rail Authority Board of Directors. This is our third meeting. And Violet, would you like to offer any introductory instructions for folks participating today?
You bet. Yeah, I would just love to remind folks we're going to be firstly recording this meeting, just to let you know. So if you would like to turn your cameras off, you're welcome to. You can also keep them on. We would ask that the board members keep their cameras on throughout the meeting. And also, please keep your mics muted until you're ready to speak so that we can get rid of some background noise. And then when it comes time for public comment, Dave's gonna call for it. If you're calling in on Microsoft Teams on your computer, there's a little hand feature. So if you click on that, it'll raise your hand and let Dave know that you would like to speak. And if you're calling in on your phone, it's just, you have to press *6 to unmute. Unfortunately, you won't be able to raise your hand, but if you just hit *6 to unmute yourself and let us know you have comment to give, then we can call on you and take your comment that way. And I think that's all I had, Dave, but I can also do the roll call if you're ready for that.
Yeah, in just a minute here. Thanks, Violet, for that information. And my apologies to folks if you noticed on one of our agendas that it erroneously said that this meeting was beginning at 9 p.m. rather than 9 a.m. I guess if you're waiting for that, you are not on the line now. But as exciting as the topic is that we're discussing today, I suspect even the most diehard folks might have trouble waiting it out till 9 to 10:30 p.m. tonight. So one thing, just to kick things off, and again, for folks who don't know me, I'm Dave Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioner and Chair of the Rail Authority. I want to welcome everyone who took time out of their day to join us. And I also want to recognize if there are any representatives, staff member representatives of our congressional delegation on the line. I did see Deb Franzen from Senator Tester's office on the line. Do we have other representatives? I see a hand up. Zach?
Zach Ringsack from the Butte office for Senator Tester's on too.
Great. Thanks, Zach. Are there any other representatives of either our two senators or U.S. representative? Okay. Well, welcome, Zach and Deborah. So without further delay, Violet, would you like to do a roll call for board members?
You betcha. Yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind just unmuting really fast and letting me know you're here, I'll just run through my list. First up from Broadwater County, we have Daryl Folkboard. Are you out there, Daryl? Okay, and then from Butte Silverbow, Sean Fredrickson.
Here.
Thanks. From Dawson County, Jason Stewart.
Here.
Perfect. Scott McFarland, Gallatin County. Scott, I see your name on there, so I'm going to mark you down as present. And then Bill Slaughter from Granite County. No, Bill. Mary Hensley from Jefferson County. And I know Dave Strohmeyer is here. Bill Bird from Park County.
Here.
Thanks, Bill. Terry Jennings from Powell County.
Here.
Thanks, Terry. Deanna Bachnes from Prairie. I see you on there, Deanna, so I'm going to mark you down. And then Jerry McDonald from Sanders County.
Here.
Perfect. And then lastly, Ed Anderson from Webo County.
Present.
Awesome. And that is the roll, Dave.
Thanks, Violet. And Violet or Kyla on the line, I just got a message from Senator Daines' staff member, Danielle Tribble. She's trying to get on the line, but apparently is in some other meeting, not nearly as invigorating as this meeting, I'm sure. So I don't know if either of you have Danielle's contact information or could get it and send her an invite. That would be great.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And for folks out there who would like to comment on something that is not on our agenda already, but presumably within the purview of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, this is your time to comment. So I'm calling for comment on items not on the agenda. Please raise your hand or chime in if you have something you'd like to say. Okay, moving right along. We do have a quorum present today, so we have minutes to approve from January 20th, 2021, our last meeting. Are there any corrections or additions or modifications to those minutes? Okay, seeing none without objection, they will stand approved. We have two special guests with us today. I'm delighted to introduce John Spain, who's the Vice Chairman of the Southern Rail Commission, and John Robert Smith, Chairman of Transportation for America. We are at this somewhat awkward stage in the development of this rail authority where we are both fully engaged in creating the infrastructure of the authority itself, but also needing to move forward on taking advantage of opportunities that are pressing and before us right now, legislatively and otherwise. And I think both of these gentlemen bring a great deal of insight to the table in terms of the nexus between passenger rail and economic development, how a multi-state regional rail commission, which is different than what we've just created here in Montana, can also be complementary to our efforts. And with that, John Robert or John, I'll turn it over to you and let you add any more by way of introduction to who you guys are, and let us know when you're ready and we'll queue up your slides.
Very good. Well, I can just lead off on who we are. I've met a number of you over other meetings such as this, remote meetings. Both John and I are eager to get an invitation to come to Montana. I think a little fishing would be in order while we're out there, and as soon as we're able to travel and you all are able to welcome guests in a comfortable way after we've dealt with the virus in the country, then we'd love to come out and be of whatever help we can and enjoy your beautiful part of the country and the assets that too many Americans are unaware of that the state of Montana holds. So I'm John Robert Smith, Chairman of Transportation for America. It is a national alliance of elected and business leaders around the transportation solutions that are important to localities and to states and the funding that's necessary to make those visions a reality. Before coming to Transportation for America, I was in local government for 20 years, 16 years as the mayor of my hometown of Meridian, Mississippi. It's a strong mayor form of government. We built the South's first multimodal transportation center about 30 years ago. And from that work, I was appointed to the Amtrak Board of Directors, where I served for 2.5 years as the chairman of the board. And part of the work that I do is providing policy advice to the Southern Rail Commission. And I'm pleased to be joined today by John Spain, a commissioner from the state of Louisiana. And John will begin after you introduce himself.
And if anyone's not muted out there, if you could do me a favor and mute your phone or computer, that would be fantastic. We're getting a little bit of feedback. And are you ready for your slides, John Robert?
Well, let John introduce himself and then he can tell you to bring up the slides, Dave.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. We're delighted to be a part of this conversation. Wish you well. We consider ourselves partners in this conversation, and we stand ready as a resource to help you in any way we can. I'm John Spain. As John Robert said, I'm a Louisiana commissioner. We'll talk a little bit about that. You can bring up the slides now, Dave, and we'll just get directly into it. I'll give you some background on the Southern Rail Commission.
All right, go ahead, Violet, if you could.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's some background. Southern Rail Commission was established by the Congress of the United States in 1982. As far as we know, it's the only interstate rail compact ever established by Congress. And we are urging Congress as we speak to authorize the creation of at least 10 more across the country. We each serve at the pleasure of our governors. Each governor appoints 6 appointees to the SRC, and those states are currently Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. The congressional act that created us for the purpose of promoting passenger rail. It also allows us to invite other contiguous states to join us. Over the years, we've talked to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and others about becoming part of the compact. And that has not happened, but we still think that it might at some point, because some of the projects we're working on actually will extend the rails into Florida in particular. The next map will show you that here is our vision. Here you see the 3 states in dark blue, and you get an idea of some of what the work is that we're doing. The I-20 corridor from Dallas to Shreveport to Meridian, the Baton Rouge to New Orleans project, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Gulf Coast passenger rail. Gulf Coast passenger rail is probably the highest project we're working on. It's a good example of the power of the Southern Rail Commission, in that in 2005, the rail was washed out by Hurricane Katrina and service was suspended. The rails have long been replaced, but the service has not. Southern Rail Commission, working with our partners at Amtrak and our friends in Congress, actually created something called the Gulf Coast Working Group. Congress appropriated $1 million for that project, whose goal was to determine what is necessary for the service to restart. And we have now completed the study after hiring consultants. We have the final report, and we're now working with Amtrak and the passenger freight operators to determine when we can start that service. And we'll be happy to talk about that in more detail.
Before we leave this map, John, everyone noticed that the light blue lines that you see running the length of Mississippi into New Orleans and through Alabama, there are 2 long distance trains. The city of New Orleans from Chicago to New Orleans, and the Crescent from New York and ultimately to Boston to New Orleans. So we not only work what new passenger rail should be added to serve our states, but in making sure we preserve these long distance trains that we already have, and especially to return daily service to those trains. Go ahead, John.
While we look at that map, let us just kind of tell you why we think it's so important to create these multi-state entities. If you look at the project, as I just said, it started shortly after 2005. We're now in 2021. Rail projects are complex, they take a lot of time. And think for a moment, if you had to deal with 3 governors, 3 secretaries of transportation, both of those who have changed several times during the course of this project, and literally dozens of mayors of cities along the route. Think about that if you were applying for federal funds, having 3 states apply, and then how do you bring those dollars back to concentrate on a single project? The idea of the commission is demonstrated by the work on the Gulf Coast, that because we are appointed by our governors, we have access to the highest levels of state government. That means that each governor appoints 6 commissioners, and each state appropriates money to help us operate and do our work. We are non-compensated volunteers. In our example, each state provides $65,000, a very modest amount of money. And part of what we'll talk about is that we're going to ask for federal money to match that in the upcoming session of Congress. But what has happened on the Gulf Coast project, instead of having the 3 states apply for federal funding, because we are a creation of the Congress of the United States, we applied for Christie federal funds for the project and were granted them $30 million. Then each state under the act was obligated to provide local matches, which all 3 states did, again, because we have relationships with our governors. It simplified the process. Congress, Amtrak, the Federal Railroad Administration all had one single point of contact, and that was the Southern Rail Commission. It simplifies it. It makes it easier. Our federal friends and colleagues who are part of this project understood that this was the best way to do it. It eliminated multiple levels of bureaucracy. We have in our planning stages, we have 3 or 4 other lines that we hope to have done within our states. And it also allows us to have conversations with other states about high-speed rail. So we just got on a conversation this morning with another member from Congress, and we talked about high speed. If you look at Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, it's unlikely that we're going to see true high speed just because we're rural states with without a lot of large population cities, with the exceptions of perhaps Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Jackson, and Mobile. But when we talk to our friends in Dallas, they want to go high speed to Atlanta. They want to go high speed to Chicago. Our friends in Houston that we meet with want to have high speed connections into New Orleans. So we are, again, a part of a discussion with states around us who are going to move more fast than we are to implement high speed, and that's part of our work as well. We have become recognized in Congress. I give credit to John Robert and Transportation for America. They are our policy advisor in Washington. At the end of the day, none of this gets done without having the support of Congress. That's where the money comes from. That's where the legislation comes from. And you have to have representation in Washington. And I would tell you that one of the best decisions the commission ever did was hire John Robert and Transportation for America. In my closing remarks, I think, and we'll be happy to take questions, is that we believe with the election of President Biden, whether your politics are with him or not, we believe that the opportunity for passenger rail is perhaps the best opportunity we've had in a long time. Everybody knows they call him Amtrak Joe. He is a supporter of Amtrak. He rides it. He understands it. And we are looking forward to his address to Congress in the coming weeks, where he will lay out his plan for transportation infrastructure investment. That very well could be a $2 trillion package. We want to be able to respond to that and have conversations and relationships with our congressional members and with the administration about how those dollars could flow to our states to help us implement these projects. When we started the commission, the goal was always to cooperate with freight. It has to work for freight operators as well as passenger service. And so we've always tried to do that, although at times that's been difficult. So we are here for you as a resource. We'll be happy to answer your questions. We have said and will repeatedly repeat to the members of Congress, and we actually, John Robert can go into it, we've actually written legislation that would empower you all to become a multi-state commission. If we can help in any way, we're here to help you, and we'd be happy to answer questions and respond to those in any way we can. And I think the next slide is actually something, John Robert, that you're probably better qualified to talk about than I am.
Well, thank you, John.
Okay, I was looking ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead and address this one, John.
Okay, this is the project I just talked about. That line in orange is the Gulf Coast project. One of the problems with it, when it was in operation, this was a Sunset Limited, and it ran in bad hours in the middle of the night, and as a result of that, it didn't attract very many riders. When we started talking about restoring it, we said we can do better than that. And so what we're now talking about is daytime service, and we're going to build this out in phases with a train based in Mobile, Alabama, a train based in New Orleans, and each one of them leave that city in the morning and go back at the end of the day, giving us 4 passes through all those cities along the Gulf Coast. We will connect major centers for tourism, recreation, and commerce. This is the Gulf Coast beaches. Hundreds and thousands of people come to this part of the country every day, particularly this summer, to enjoy our beautiful weather, enjoy our beaches. Ultimately, in a future phase, we will go east of Mobile and connect to Orlando. The idea of connecting 2 of America's great tourist cities, New Orleans and Orlando. And again, this will be daylight service, and we will obviously spend a few more years getting all of this put together. If everything goes right and we have some cooperation from the freight railroads, we believe this service could actually start maybe early 22, a year from now, give or take. And we look forward to that. Next slide.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Are the services you are proposing state supported or long distance?
These are all state supported, although it depends on how we extend it. Ultimately, if it goes long enough, it may become that. But these are all going to be run by Amtrak and these are basically going to require state funding.
Thank you.
So to further answer that question about the state-supported, the two long-distance routes that we have are obviously would remain long distance. The splitting of the Crescent and Meridian and sending the sleeper section overnight to Dallas-Fort Worth, that would be part of a long-distance system. So we're working both state-supported and long-distance. And one of the things to keep in mind is, and you all may remember when the Empire Builder actually served food that was indicative of the region within which you travel. For the Gulf Coast service, the commission wants very much that that service reflects our part of the country. And with good Southern food, gumbo and shrimp and oysters, and will obviously be
Beignets.
good Southern toddies offered on that train as well. So we want the experience of the South, our part of coastal South, to begin when you step on the train, not when you step off the train. So we would intend to manage the service on board, manage the food and drink on board, and manage the personnel on board so that that flavor is distinct. And we think that will certainly give you a good taste of the South when you step on that train and take you to vibrant cities across the Gulf. I would just first like to thank all of you for allowing John and me to be with you today. And I am very pleased with what the Big Sky Commission is doing within the state of Montana. And I've always prided myself in being able to work across the aisle, but Dave has bested me. He has shown that he is able to work across the Atlantic and draw attention from Portugal. So I was very interested to hear the podcast, and although I could not understand, my Portuguese is rather limited, couldn't understand the questions, I could certainly understand Dave's answers, and just had to call that out, Dave. What a great spokesman you've been for your part of the country.
Thanks, John Robert. And I'll share in the chat for those folks who are not aware of what you're referencing. Our efforts here in the state of Montana were just a couple of days ago featured in a podcast from a news outlet in Portugal, of all places. So,
and I think, honestly, I think the Portuguese news outlet picked up on a very similar story that appeared in the New York Times, because you see stories like restoring service along the Gulf or restoring service in a state like Montana. Those are newsworthy. You know, you expect to hear of it in the Northeast or in California. You don't expect to hear of it in our parts of the world. So I think that's why those stories resonate. I just pick up quickly on some accomplishments that the SRC has been able to have at the national level. Honestly, the fact that rail was included in the FAST Act authorization. So the first, it's always been highways, and then for surface transportation, then transit was added to it and done under President Reagan. And then now, largely due to the work of the Southern Rail Commission with both Senator Wicker, Chairman of Commerce at the time, and Senator Booker, who was ranking, that rail is in the FAST Act. Secondly, as a part of answering the question Congress asked in the Gulf Coast Working Group study of what will it cost to restore service along the Gulf, and I bring this to you because the Southern Rail Commission didn't have to pay to have FRA do that examination, and this could be a course forward for you as you look to restore service along the southern tier of Montana. Congress directed FRA to work with entities, in our case along the Gulf, could be with your commission, to study what is actually needed in infrastructure, what kind of schedule makes sense, what kind of equipment makes sense, what's needed at station stops. That full analysis was done with $1 million of appropriations that were set aside for the work of the Gulf Coast Working Group. And once those results were delivered, and I remind you that the freight railroad said, oh, well, it's going to take $2.3 billion of infrastructure needs. And FRA's report said, no, actually from New Orleans to Mobile, it's $66 million. And Congress in appropriations reporting language said very clearly, we accept the report of the Gulf Coast Working Group led by the FRA. We do not accept the numbers provided by the freight railroad. So I know that has been an issue for you in the past. This might be a way of addressing that without you having to pay for it. But out of that, then comes the question of, okay, well then how do you pay for that $66 million that FRA says is needed? And how do you operate that train? So again, due to the work of the SRC, and I think you would find Senate Commerce would tell you this, in a Congress where they said no new authorizations, no new programs. So we worked with them to create what was called the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement Grant, or CRISI. So it wasn't a new program, it was a consolidated set of existing programs, and then of course we amped them up considerably. So CRISI allows you to apply for a federal grant of 50-50 match. We think the next transportation authorization is going to make this a true 80-20 match, if not a 90-10 match. And that's 80 federal, 20 non-federal, or 90 federal, 10 non-federal for the infrastructure investment, closing grade crossings, extending sidings, changing out your interlockings that may be involved, or your turnouts that need to be changed to accommodate passenger rail, all of those things. And the not only worked to authorize it, but worked through appropriations that was then chaired by Senator Cochran to fund the CRISI grant. And the SRC successfully competed and now has $66 million that was identified for the infrastructure, with the states putting up half and the federal government putting up half. Then if you think about the state-supported trains of today, most of them started as federally supported trains. And it was only under PREA that they were determined to be state-supported. And they had had several years, in some cases decades, to build up the ridership, the revenue, the schedules that needed to be altered to make them work right. So the Restoration and Enhancement Grant Program was created to provide the first 3 years of operating support for any new or expanded service. The first year, it's 80% federal. And I'm talking about the difference between the fare box return and the cost to operate. 80% federal the first year, 20% non-federal, and then it slides to 60% federal and then down to 40% federal. We hear that there are programs being looked at now that would expand that to a 5-year glide path. But the SRC applied for those funds and were successfully awarded the operating funds for the first 3 years. And just bear in mind, there is no transportation system, highways, rail, aviation, anything that carries human beings in the world. There are none of them that pay for themselves out of the fare box. When you think about all that's provided at the federal level to make highways operate and to make aviation operate. So it's not fair to assume that somehow magically passenger rail will pay for itself out of the fare box. Then the Gulf Coast Working Group was established by Congress, and again, the federal recognition and matching funds for 5 more interstate rail commissions. That's something we're asking for, but actually that has grown to 10 such commissions, and I'll talk to you about how that came about, and we're through with the slides.
I think a couple of points to make there is that this is one of those rare cases where Congress has actually provided a fair amount of money for what we're talking about. It's often the case when we start these conversations, we get lost very quickly in saying, well, we don't have the money. This is a case where really the money is sitting on the table. And in fact, there are cases on a RIF loan program where Congress has demonstrated a high level of frustration because people aren't using the money because they've created a bureaucracy in getting to use it. But we've been very successful, again, with the leadership of John Robert, Transportation for America. As you saw in that last slide, there are pots of money both for capital, meaning rail stations, railroad infrastructure improvements, and then there is a program that allows you to have the federal government subsidize the operational costs for the first 3 years. I'm reading some of the email that you all are exchanging between yourselves. Vicki, I think this has been answered, but we in all of our operations are using existing freight lines. So in terms of concerns about taking people's lands, cutting up farms, we're using existing freight lines. So we don't have that issue. That issue, as we've already talked about, does result in conflicts between the freight owners and passenger service. Freight has been one of the consistent obstacles because in some cases they don't want to share their rails with us. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about $66 million in infrastructure improvements proposed for the Gulf Coast, we're taking federal and state dollars to improve that private railroad's infrastructure. They are a direct beneficiary of the money we're spending to help improve the railroad in order to get the speeds and the safety we need for passenger rail. It's also important that we're using Amtrak. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, people forget that the freight railroads ran passenger service. They were a regulated industry. And with the advent of the interstate highway and jet engines, they were losing money and asked Congress to get out of the passenger service. And the quid pro quo was that Congress said, yes, we're going to let you out. We're going to create Amtrak. And it's obvious that we can't overnight start building new rails. So you have to allow Amtrak to use your freight rail lines. Amtrak will pay you, we'll lease it, we'll pay you for the wear and tear, but basically you cannot say no to Amtrak. So we have a right of way to use those lines, but it is difficult. Some freight lines appreciate it and work very well, and others do not. And that's one of the challenges we have on the Gulf Coast. 2 points that I'm making is that we're not buying new land, we're not building new rails, except in those cases where part of the infrastructure may be to add siding so the freight train can get out of the way of the passenger train. There is some new rail there, but it is in the existing right-of-way. We don't anticipate taking anybody's land. And 2, the money is sitting there in Congress for much of what you want to do. It's a competitive grant. The same money that's available to us is available to you.
So Dave, let me give you a flavor of what's happening on the Hill. That'd be appropriate.
Yes, please do.
So we organized and now have completed probably 24 Hill meetings. So we meet with the SRC, with every office, certainly from our 3 states, but every office of jurisdiction over passenger rail. That's chair and ranking member of every House committee, every Senate committee, both authorization and appropriation. And we have already had meetings with both Senator Tester's staff and Senator Daines' staff. And I just want to assure you that you are in really a plum situation with your Senate delegation, in that they are both, if not on any other subject, they are in lockstep in support of passenger rail in the state of Montana. And they're very strong voices. They could not have been more supportive in the conversations that we had with them. And that's a lever that you have to pull that is unique, and you should be very appreciative that you have that. And of course, in a split Senate 50-50, every single Democrat's important. And you have one of those. And I would suggest that you use that, and certainly with support of your Republican senator as well. So we met with Senate Commerce to begin with, and Senator Wicker is now the ranking member, but we've had a long-standing relationship with Senator Cantwell as as well, because we always visit both sides of the aisle on these issues. So she knows us. Her staff expressed her support for Senator Wicker's continued interest, and she is supportive of the commission language. She's supportive of the other issues we've raised with them. We always start with return daily service to the long distance trains, create more commissions, balance the Amtrak board, which is presently skewed towards the Northeast. And we can talk a little more about that specific recommendation, and then ways to deal with the freights, which by federal law, they have to allow you the access. This is short line or freights as well, access to not only the rail, but platforms, stations, any other asset. They're compensated for that, and they have to run passengers as preferred. So human beings take precedence over goods and freight. Very strong support within Senate Commerce, both sides of the aisle, and we've had conversations with each of the member offices of Commerce. We also worked on the House side, certainly starting with Chairman DeFazio, which will reintroduce his T&I bill with a rail title, which was very robust. It was part of HR 2 in the last Congress. It'll be reintroduced. We have several members of his committee that are seeking to add the commission language to the newly introduced bill. We also met with Chairman Price from North Carolina, DeFazio's obviously from Oregon, Price from North Carolina, who is very supportive of passenger rail and will be very supportive of appropriations requests. And I think will also give a message to DeFazio that he understands the importance of commissions, because North Carolina has said our vision is not just North Carolina, it extends into South Carolina and into Virginia. So we need an entity that is authorized to work across the 3 states. So, and I'm not sure John mentioned it, one of the big projects moving forward for the SRC will be Baton Rouge to New Orleans, the 2 largest cities in the state. While it's wholly within Louisiana, the entire commission supports it. So you don't get into these turf battles of whose project goes first. It's based on what is best for the region. We also had a very strong meeting with the Federal Railroad Administration, those who are career staff that have known us for a while, but also the acting Federal Railroad Administrator, Amit Bose, who is the presumed deputy administrator for FRA. Very strong meeting there, very supportive of the issues that we have raised. We are assured that in the relief bill, Amtrak appropriations will be tied to returning daily service, the long distance trains, and returning the employees that have to be there to run those services, because they furloughed some 2,000 plus employees. And we were told that while in a budget reconciliation, you may not actually be able to put strings in the language, that the leadership will place a call to Amtrak to say, this is what it's tied to, and ignore that at your peril. So I believe we will see daily service restored on the long distance trains. Again, there was only one negative meeting we had, and that was on the House side with the minority staff, who members are still focused on that passenger rail should make a profit. And of course, keep in mind, you may be thinking, well, aviation makes a profit. Yes, but we do everything else but fly the planes. The federal government supplies all the air traffic controllers, all the TSA agents. We build the airports, we build the runways. They don't do any of that for passenger rail. And of course, as you know, with highways, as important as they are to your state and my state and John's state, still only 40% comes out of the gas tax, and it's going down and down every year. The rest comes out of the general fund. And in DC, I don't have to have a car, so I don't own one, yet I pay out of my taxes to support the highways. I'm fine with that, but the notion that the highways pay for themselves is just not borne up by the facts.
So John Robert, you answered one of the questions that they've asked. One of the earlier questions was in Texas. There was controversy about the railroad taking farmers' land. Texas has got large enough populations in most of their large cities to justify true high speed. And as you probably know, is they've hired an Asian company, a private company, to do that. And they are building high speed between Dallas and Houston, Austin, San Antonio. And that, as a result of that, they are not using existing lines and are having to acquire new land, and that is the controversy. That's not what we're talking about.
And I don't think that's what you're talking about either.
That's what I'm saying. We're not talking about that. And then I think the other one was, you know, is the rail travel competitive with driving in an automobile? And obviously, you know, I think that relates to how far is the trip, how long you're going to be there, and those kind of things. But let me make a case is that as members of the Southern Rail Commission, we try to ride trains as often as we can. We pay our own way. Nobody gives us free rides for the most part. And what we do is when we get on those trains, we ask people why they're on the trains. Why are they riding a train? And the thing you have to remember is that these are, in many cases, maybe a majority of cases, these are working people. When we rode the Empire Builder late last year, these are people with great diversity, people of color. These are people who can't afford to get on an airline. They cannot fly. And in many cases, they don't have cars. But even if they have cars over long distances, they find that Amtrak is, you know, their mode of transportation that they prefer because it's both affordable and it's dependable. And so, you know, some of us ride it for leisure. You know, we clearly, you know, enjoyed it. It was a working trip for us, but seeing your beautiful part of the country, it was clearly a pleasure for us. But every time we've been on a train, no matter where we're going, it is filled with working people. And we need to remember in our states and perhaps in yours, those small and medium-sized cities are losing air service. And as a result of that, when you look at our plans 10, 15, 20 years out, we believe that we're going to have international airports that have to be connected by interstate highways and passenger trains. If you live in a small state in Louisiana, the north part of our state, you're going to want to go to Dallas to get a flight because they're going to lose air service. Or they're going to come to New Orleans. And they could get in a car and they could drive for 4 or 5 hours. Or we could put them on a train and take them safely and comfortably into that airport and back home. So yes, we're talking about what we'd like to do today, but when you look at the long term, multimodal transportation is becoming very, very important, and people will see reduced air service. That's more and more as that is coming, and passenger rail becomes the answer for the working people who need to get across this country, and we need to remember that. It becomes critical.
So if you look at the service proposed along the Gulf, it is going to be competitive with the automobile as far as trip time between New Orleans and Mobile. But if you're driving in that automobile, you're not going to be working. You're not going to be on a Zoom. You know, you're not going to be, at least I hope you're not, returning emails. On that trip on the train, you can work all the way there if you want to, or you can merely relax.
You don't want to get on I-10 anywhere in the south part of this country. Trust me, it is bumper to bumper traffic. And when you get into the summer months where people are leaving Louisiana to go to their second homes in Florida, if you could get on a train, have a cocktail, have Wi-Fi, and get there, that's going to be the route of preference. If you're sitting in the Mississippi and parts of Alabama, you're going to fly out of a new, beautiful $1 billion airport in New Orleans. You're just going to do it because, frankly, the cost of the train to get you to New Orleans is going to be less than one night's parking at the airport of your car. And, you know, from an economic standpoint, from a leisure standpoint, from a time value standpoint, you know, the routes we're talking about are going to be pretty obvious. People are going to get on this train. And
the reason Mississippi DOT is funding their part of the infrastructure across the Gulf, all of the grade crossings that will need to be addressed, is because they see it as saving money they will have to spend on the U.S. highway and the interstate that serves those same areas. The less wear and tear they place on those highways, the better. And they see the investment in rail as a way to do that. Also look at the decisions the young people are making. I'm not sure who your youngest commissioner is, but the young people are much more drawn to different forms of transportation. They're less enamored of the automobile than others. And I can tell you from visiting your universities in Montana, which I did a number of years ago, they were telling me, for example, the only reason they had a car at the University in Missoula was so they could get home for the holidays. That actually, Missoula works very well as a bikeable, walkable community, and they really didn't need a car at that campus. And I think that is true in more and more universities that we see across the country. And one other thing to keep in mind, when you're building a new highway, you say, we want an interchange here because look at all the economic development that's going to come if we have that interchange. Well, think about rail, and every station is an interchange. And you need to be looking at the economic impact to those local governments and local citizens and local businesses by the fact that you have that stop. We did an analysis of the stations across the Gulf between New Orleans and Mobile in Harrison County, Mississippi. That's Gulfport and Biloxi, have a lot of casinos there. The added impact with just a 5% increase in visitor traffic was worth $90 million a year. To the state of Mississippi, it was a little over $200 million a year. That makes the investment, which Mississippi put up, of somewhere around one-time investment of $24 million in infrastructure. That's a pretty good return on your investment right there. So keep that in mind. And as far as the new administration, they reached out to ask us for 10 corridors that could be governed by commissions that bridged more than one state. And they said, look at those places that have vibrant, smaller economies, not the biggest. Don't give us the San Franciscos and the Chicagos. We know those. Give us those that have vibrant, smaller economies that are in red states, in rural areas, and that are impacted potentially by the loss of essential air service. And one of those 10 that we recommended was your corridor, because we think there are large cities in Montana, and those vibrant economies need to be connected. And the concern is that if you abandon those places only to the automobile, then you're hampering your economic potential for the future.
I would, Dave, have any of these people seen the video from our inspection train?
I'm not sure. Do you have that queued up?
No, I just,
okay.
I don't, but I would tell you that
okay.
as part of our work, we did what was called an inspection train about 5 years ago. And it was part of, one, educating people, but two, it's a requirement that when you have new rail lines, then we've got to get engineers in those locomotives to ride it for the first time, get experience, and we were gathering data for future passenger rail across that line. The point of which is that that train left New Orleans and went to Jacksonville. And what this 3-minute video clip is, and you can just, look for it on YouTube.
We'll send it to you, Dave. And
we'll send it to you and you can look at it. It says what we're saying to you in a really exciting visual way. Every small town, without our, having to do a thing, show up. We had the cheerleaders, the high school band, people holding up signs saying, please give us rail service. When you get outside these big urban areas where we have lots of choices, these people in this town understand that they need this. It brings people to the Gulf Coast. It builds their economy. It also gives them a route. And as the old saying goes, one picture is worth 1,000 words. Look at it. It'll take you about 3 minutes. And it just kind of shows you the reaction we got as we crossed our part of this country, with people coming from their homes, meeting us at the train station, waving. I mean, it was really, something that we were shocked by, frankly, but we're so delighted that people, demonstrated their passion for these things. And, it's something you all could think about when you start trying to start this thing up. But look at that video, and you, I think, will have the same reaction I did. It was a genuine pouring out of excitement about this.
John Robert, we're going to need to pivot into some questions here in just a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would just say that when we send you this and you look at it, And, you know, Senator Wicker invited Secretary Buttigieg to come ride the service. And of course, he said he would. He's a former mayor. He gets these sort of things. Imagine, do you think he could refuse a request from Senator Tester and Senator Daines and a request to Amtrak to ride the service along the southern tier to envision what could happen? I think that would happen.
Well, as luck would have it, we do have representatives from both Tester and Daines offices on the line today. And so I think with our, and we've still got a lot on our agenda today to get through. So I think what I'd like to do is first have questions from the board members, the directors of the Rail Authority, and then we'll entertain some from the public. But before we do either of those, and thanks, John and John Robert again, I did get a message. We now have Danielle Tribble from Senator Daines' office on the line, and she would like to say a few words. Danielle?
Thank you, Commissioner. So I did just wanted to provide an update to everyone on the call. Our legislative staff in DC did have a call with Commerce this week. The call went well, and the committee has been working with groups on language that would authorize up to 10 commissions in the same manner as the Southern Rail Commission, which was kind of touched on a bit earlier. It would include Montana's, and this is something that could potentially be included in the surface transportation bill with bipartisan support. So we are hopeful that the surface transportation reauthorization will move sooner rather than later. And we are currently waiting on the language from the Senate Legislative Council to review it. So I will go ahead and drop my contact information in the chat box here. So if anyone would like to reach out and talk about this further, you know where to reach me. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Danielle.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. So I do see Paul out there with his hand up, but before we get to you, Paul, let's have some discussion among the commission members if the board of directors have any, or I should say the authority directors, if you have any questions or comments. Any comments from the authority? Well, I'll break the ice. John Robert or John Spain, could you just elaborate maybe a little bit on the Gulf Coast Working Group and whether that would be a potential model for us in this region, hypothetically a mountains to plains working group or some such entity along our proposed corridor?
Well, Dave, that was our way of getting the issues of capital needs between the cities along the Gulf and the operating need addressed without having to pay for it. So the Gulf Coast Working Group funding was all provided by authorization and appropriations, $1 million. You know, that's a trivial ask in today's numbers that are being discussed in the Capitol. And that's where it could be a model for you. You know you're going to have to readdress that along the southern tier. And if you have FRA lead it, you have an entity that's all they do. I mean, they give it authority and they give it credibility.
Thank you. Any questions from the board of directors before we open it up? Well, let's go ahead and open it for questions or comment from the public or other participants. And I will say that we have, at this moment in time, 81 participants in this meeting, which is not too shabby for a board meeting. We rarely get that many folks, even if there is a zoning proposal on one of our county commission agendas. So Paul Pacini, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Actually, my question was answered on chat. I just wanted to know how to find that video on YouTube. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I have another question while folks are maybe gathering their thoughts here. Again, John Spain or John Robert, given the fact that we have a intrastate rail authority now established, what's your experience been as far as the Southern Rail Commission interfacing with rail authority-like entities, if any such thing exists in your jurisdiction?
I think most of our are a part of State Department of Transportation's. You know, we have people in each of our state's offices who are assigned to develop the state's master rail plan, those kind of things. In Louisiana, the Secretary of Transportation is a member of the commission. And similar people from the other states have served on the commission as well. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, we work closely with them. I think they see us as a resource. Frankly, as we talked about in our opening remarks, I think they see us as a way of getting both money and the ability to move quickly without getting bogged down in state bureaucratic red tape to get some of the projects that they really would like to see. And so I think they see us as a friend, a resource, someone that can have helping them achieve their goals. I don't know, John Robert, that we have any existing compacts like what Dave is talking about.
No, but we have experience with other states that do. And of course, understand that at least in our 3 states, and I would bet it's similar in Montana, your DOT is principally concentrating on highways. And maybe other modes as they're compelled to do. And honestly, with Mississippi, we started with 3 employees out of 3,300 that were devoted to rail at Mississippi DOT. So they're glad to have someone else pick up the lift of how to do these things. We've been talking to North Carolina and Virginia that have newly minted, in Virginia's case, intrastate authority. But there's no reason your intrastate authority couldn't be the commissioners that then serve on an interstate commission. I think you'd want to add some folks from the northern part of the state so that it truly represents the state. But there's no you don't have to create an entirely new bureaucracy to deal with the commission. You just elect members of your authority to be your voice on an interstate commission. That's what Virginia's looking at. That's what North Carolina would do.
Thanks. Any final comments or questions from either the commission or the public?
Dave, my final comment would just be to thank those representatives from Senator Daines and Tester's office. We've had good conversation with both their offices, and I will tell you that in our work in Washington, the idea of creating other commissions across the nation actually came out of a senator's office who asked to meet with us because they'd heard of our work and asked, how do I get this for my state? How do I do this? So we're very, very hopeful that Congress will authorize additional commissioners, commissions. And as I said on my closing remarks, it's been a privilege and an honor for us to get to know some of you all in these conversations. We stand as an example of the success, and we also stand as a resource to you. Don't hesitate to call us. We'll get on these phones with you anytime you want to. And I say that selfishly, as I said at the outset, we want more commissions because that means congressional delegations, and you've got demonstration of that here today, will then have additional voices in Congress. And as we do that, we'll have more and more friends that can help us get this thing done. So we appreciate it, and if we can ever help in any way, please call on us.
And Dave, just one more thing to keep in mind, the language that creates the commissions also creates matching federal funds. So whatever your states would put into the operating support of the commission, the feds would match dollar for dollar. And we also give priority or preference to commissions when applying for any federal grant at the DOT level, CRISI grants, R&E grants, build grants, prime grants, if they become a real thing moving forward.
Well, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you, John Robert and John Spain. It's good to see you again, and we will absolutely take you up on your offer to continue coordination and collaboration and discussions. So thank you so much.
We're coming fishing.
Okay, we'll do it. You can come skiing right now. So, all right.
Thank you. We'll leave you now.
Thank you. All right. Goodbye. Well, moving on to our next item on the agenda, and we are firing on all cylinders these days. This was a busy week with subcommittee meetings of the Rail Authority. We had 4 subcommittee meetings this week, including from the Rules of Procedure and Bylaws Subcommittee, the Strategic Planning Subcommittee, Communications and Public Relations and Finance. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the chairpersons of each of those subcommittees to just say a few words about your meetings this week and where you see yourself going in the future, because I think between our normal full board meetings as we're having today, these subcommittees will be meeting and conducting their business and bringing forward recommendations to the full board. So with that, I would like to start with an update from the Rules of Procedure and Bylaws Subcommittee.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmeyer. We met on Tuesday for an hour and discussed, well, we had a lengthy discussion on bylaws from the Southern Rail Committee and numerous others. And we're moving forward. We're going to have another meeting in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, we're gathering all of our information and hopefully we'll have something soon to present to the rest of the board.
Great. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. Next, from Strategic Planning, who just met yesterday.
Yep, this is Scott McFarland here. We had a lot of talking in our meeting yesterday. We had Dan Clark helped us through kind of understanding what a visioning exercise looks like. I don't have a lot of progress to report. It's a difficult thing to get our hands around. Specifically what kind of time frame that we're thinking about and what makes sense for us to actually get our arms around. And it's going to require some coming back to the general commission at large and maybe doing some surveying of everybody about how big we're thinking. We have to put a box around it somehow, otherwise it's just too big. We want to make it something that's useful for us and something that actually motivates outcomes instead of being too abstract. So we ended that meeting with a few action items. We're going to get together and talk a little bit more offline over the next couple of days about how best to come back to this larger group and actually get some product.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. And before we move on to public relations and communications, I just wanted to recognize Sonny Capice, who is Governor Gianforte's Economic Development Advisor, is on with us today, and he just wanted to make sure that, and I think that he put his contact information in the chat, that he is also available as a resource to the authority. So welcome, Sonny. Next we have, is that Sonny? Okay. Do we have a report from the Communications and Public Relations Subcommittee?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. The Communications and Public Relations Subcommittee met for the first time on Tuesday, and we got some irons in the fire there. We had some folks who joined in with this, some of the social media managers and tech savvy folks from Missoula County and Butte-Silver Bow County and some other volunteers have volunteered to start work and are working right now to get us a website set up. So we hope to have that in about within a couple of weeks to have an initial website up. They're going to get a kind of a placeholder Facebook page set up for us and are working on branding for the Rail Authority as well. So a couple of those folks I'll just mention real quick, Linda Bicknell with Missoula County and Jason Parrish with Silver Bow County are a couple of them, and then Aaron Riccio. And Dave, real quick, I did not get written down where Aaron was from and who he was with.
Yeah, he's with Onyx Maps.
Onyx Maps, okay, yep. So yeah, those three volunteered. They're very, tech savvy and social media savvy, and much more so than I am, or I believe Dave is. So they're going to be putting together that stuff for us, and we're going to meet again in about 3 weeks and see where we're at with, and hopefully by then we'll have a website, an initial website, and we'll have some initial branding done and get some statement, some language up on the website. So we're getting there on that.
Thanks, Jason. Much appreciated. And finally, Jerry, do you want to provide a finance subcommittee report?
Thanks, Commissioner. I'd like to say greetings to you and other folks who are on this call, esteemed members of the board, county commissioners, members of the press if they're here, tenisters, Gene Fortes, Dean's office representatives. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity not only to serve as treasurer of the authority, but the finance committee chairman. And I've just prepared some opening statement here that I hope conveys to the public and office holders the sense of the mission that we have before us from a financial perspective, the objectives in that mission, and the capability, the capable team that we have assembled to achieve those objectives. As you're aware, our finance committee has been authorized by our authority, the board. We're indeed fortunate to have attracted a volunteer force to populate that body. And in the interest of brevity here, just allow me to briefly introduce some of the qualifications. I have prepared full text that I'll introduce to the to the board by email. First is, of course, Commissioner Strohmeyer. He needs no further explanation of his qualifications here. He was pending at the board and sits on the finance committee. We have Dan Bucks. Dan has over 40 years of public policy and administrative experience, focusing on taxation and natural resource issues. We have Andrew Cerny. Andrew is the Missoula County Chief Financial Officer. He's a position he's held with the county since 2008. He has oversight of all financial matters in the county, including budget, property tax, admin, accounting, debt management, and financial reporting. Andrew's got a great background in public service and financing, debt financing, et cetera, from a financial CFO's perspective. We have Mr. Mike Newman. Mike joins us as a recent import to Montana. Got a 30-year career in government finance, transportation, project finance, and variable rate indebtedness in all sorts of public finance offerings. We have Dave Wall. Dave Wall is the Missoula County Auditor. It's always good to have an auditor on a finance committee, and joined with us. Of course, Dave started working for Missoula County in 2013. He still works for the county. He has since been appointed to fill out the term of a retiring county auditor. We have Scott Miller. Scott is a Carbon County Commissioner in the Bridger District. He's soon to be appointed as to the authority as a director when Carbon County comes aboard, which they should soon. Until then, Scott's a valuable contributor. Scott is a retired RV Sergeant Major of 25 years. He served multiple tours, combat tours in Panama, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iraq, deployments to 15 other countries. He's now operating a cow-calf operation. His family is one of the original settlers in Montana, and Scott operates that operation south of Bridger, along with his wife for over 30 years. We've got Mary Hensley, who is present, by the way. She should be marked as present. I saw she came in a little bit late. Mary's the mayor of Whitehall, and she's also one of the directors on the committee. Mary's fifth generation Montanan, raised on her grandfather's cattle ranch northeast of Whitehall, beautiful area. And she went to one-room schoolhouse, graduated from Whitehall High School and Carroll College, so she's fully Montana educated. Returned to her hometown 33 years later, never boring place to be, Whitehall, Montana. She, in that process, visited a local museum, saw that the only people that were ever mayors of Whitehall were crusty old ranchers, and she said, she decided to run for mayor and has been reelected twice. She's got a favorite saying, I know, walk the walk, talk the talk, but don't talk trash. Let's just pick it up and Thank you, Mary, for your, and she was not present, unfortunately, but she has accepted following our meeting to be on the committee. And lastly, you've got me. I'm Jerry McDonald. I'm one of the former frequent riders of the North Coast Limited. That's the very route that we wish to restore. My father, Jack, operated steam power and diesel locomotives on that route from 1937 until his retirement in 1968. From time to time, I had the privilege to ride with him on the head end of that passenger train. My father died in Plains, Montana, in Sanders County. Near that route, and I live walking distance from those rails today in Thompson Falls, where I've retired from electrical engineering and raised cattle and some cow dogs. So a team of this caliber won't rest idle like my cow dogs. If you don't give them a job, they'll find one of their own. So luckily, the Finance Committee and the Authority Treasurer have plenty of objectives in support of the Authority's mission to provide reliable passenger service across the southern half of Montana. Today, the committee is formed up by adopting a team architecture, a standing agenda, a schedule of.
Oh, you're muted accidentally there, Jerry.
And are prepared to carry out the assigned task, okay? 4 of us on the committee count ourselves as born and raised in Montana. That grants us no special distinction, but natural-born Montanans do have a code that others may be familiar with. That code is use it up, wear it out, make do, or do without. When it comes to reliable transportation throughout the state, from city to city, regardless of weather, Montanans have been doing without. It's time with rail for us to make do. So I'll just give a brief overview of the minutes of that meeting and some of the items that were discussed, as well as action items that took place in our first meeting. It was opened by the presiding officer, Dave Strohmeyer, at 1 p.m. on the 3rd. We had no comments from the public or no old business, but we did have new business to resolve. Presiding officer Strohmeyer nominated myself as chair. It was accepted and approved by acclamation. The committee ratified standing agenda items of a treasurer's report, which we feel is very important in a finance committee, reconciling that treasurer's report. Old business and new business. And then the committee agreed to regular schedule to be established, and this is important. Maybe want to take this up, that we are that this committee will meet regularly 3 business days prior to the full board of directors to give us ample time to review and provide clarity to the authority's treasurer's report. Committee further adopted a recommendation from Dan Bucks that any special meeting would convene at the call of the chair, obviously. Observing required public notifications and procedures. Committee also agreed under new business to regular meeting standing agenda. Excuse me. To include recommendations to provide finance recommendations to the or input to the authority directors, bylaws, and subcommittees. We will be working on kind of a set of financial bylaws and insert that as part of a standing agenda. I want to introduce that Dan Bucks proposed to the authority that that the authority should consider by state statute as an independent governing body, and as such should organize to assume that no single member county is overburdened with dominant or financial administrative obligations. Scott Miller added in that discussion that a distinct financial board might be authorized by the county, the authority directors, such as a VFW financial board, etc. We'll consider that and move that forward. And Andrew Cerny offered that currently the financial board, or the finances, are managed by Missoula County's finance team. And we've taken a number of steps to fulfill obligations there and to kind of get the back office working, as well as open up a channel through the website for the authority for public donations and such, and that we're filling that in so that the authority can take, donations from the public, across the spectrum. All of this discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you just wanted to summarize.
I'll wrap her up.
Okay.
Okay, all that discussion did not result in a resolution, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just introduce a couple of matters we introduced as a matter of unscheduled or unscheduled matters. A couple of items regarding a study. I think you termed it, Dave, a kind of a multifaceted socioeconomic study that we've all learned about, and Dan Bucks introduced a resolution that we all supported, that was supported unanimously, that the Finance Committee recommends that the Board of Directors of the Big Sky Passenger Service Authority authorize a study of socioeconomic benefits of passenger rail service through the southern tier of Montana and multiple connecting points beyond, and that study that the full board approve up to an amount of $65,000 to be funded through appropriate governmental and private donations. And upon that discussion, or of that introduction of that resolution, the Finance Committee motioned and approved unanimously. So that is something that we won't carry on conversation about here, but that I see as part of the agenda is introduced under new business.
Thank you, Jerry.
Sorry for that long one, but we're had a lot of work to do.
There's a lot going on. That's encouraging right out of the chute. The authority is hard at work. Diane Magone, you have your hand up. Did you have a comment on subcommittees?
I did. Actually, I had attended the meeting for communications, and afterwards Linda sent out an email asking if we had a mission statement. So I forwarded that to Scott McFarlane because I think that should come through strategic planning, unless Dave, you already have one. So Linda, you should be hearing from Scott, I would imagine. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's the classic chicken and the egg scenario of multiples of us working on things that are interrelated. But thanks for that, Diane. So one point that I just want to bring up is that if folks on the line here, if board members are not already a part of a subcommittee, you are more than welcome to join any or all of these as your time and schedule allows. So just let me know or one of the subcommittee chairs know if you'd like to participate, and we'll continue to publish electronically on our temporary web page information about each of these subcommittees and their upcoming meetings. And before we go on, I just want to make sure if either Commissioner Folkvord or Bill Slaughter are on the line. You might have come in late and we didn't capture you during the roll call.
Yes, David, this is Commissioner Folkvord. I am online and listening.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Is Bill Slaughter out there? Okay. Well, moving on to unfinished business, I just wanted to touch briefly on this idea of authority expansion, that is geographical expansion of the authority and latecomers, and that would be additional counties who might want to join the authority and did not in the initial founding of the authority by way of the joint resolution that we were all party to. I don't know if Scott Miller, are you on the line? I know that Carbon County has expressed an interest in joining. Well, that's okay. What I distributed in your electronic packets was language that has been vetted by our bond counsel, Dorsey and Whitney, which is essentially a modification of the joint resolution that all of us as 12 counties adopted. And this would be essentially a resolution that is petitioning us as the rail authority for new counties to participate. And I don't know that we need a formal motion at this time, but if folks had a chance to look at that, any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you're ready to roll with it, we could transmit it to any counties that are interested in joining the authority, such as Carbon County or any of the others out there that have not participated as of yet. Any comments?
So I have, Diane, I have my hand up again, but can you consider Mineral County too, even though it's not along the route, the proposed route at this time, but maybe that will change?
Thanks, Diane. I guess I'll open that up to the commission, the authority, excuse me. I see that as a possibility for sure, to the extent that they would perhaps benefit from connecting service such as transit service, such as bus service, to the any line that would be reestablished. And the reality is that there is a rail line through Mineral County, albeit it may not end up being the preferred route for a new long distance route. But I would welcome comments from the authority directors on either a county such as Mineral wanting to join, which has yet to be seen if the commissioners there actually would, or the language of the latecomer resolution.
This is Bill Berg. Thanks so much for putting together the latecomer resolution. It certainly looks good to me, but more importantly, it sounds like you've already had it vetted. In terms of adjacent county participation, is there a downside?
I don't necessarily see a downside, provided that the county that's joining actually is interested in the mission of the authority. And this would have to be taken on a case-by-case basis. I would not want additional. I would not want the territory expanded if the sole mission of the additional counties was to simply be a watchdog of what we're about, which might sound like a fairly cynical view. But as with all 12 of us member counties on board here that I think are in lockstep of the overall goals and mission of the authority, I would expect that of any additional counties coming on board, and that's something that we would consider as we are approached by those counties. Jerry McDonald and then Jason from Dawson County.
Yeah, I'd like to just place the motion on the floor to adopt the language as constructed and introduced.
Okay, that would be an appropriate motion.
I'll second that.
And we have a second from Sean Frederickson. Jason Stewart.
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought the resolution to allow new members to join looks great, and it's been properly vetted. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and vote that in. As far as counties not on the line itself joining, I would echo Dave's comments there. I don't necessarily see a downside to it. And obviously, as we've talked to John Robert and those guys, having that kind of connecting bus service to some of those smaller communities that are not exactly on the line is definitely, a possibility moving forward and could be part of the whole package. So I don't have a whole lot of heartburn about new, counties not exactly on the line joining, just like Dave said, as long as they're joining because they're enthusiastic and they want to, be part of pushing this forward, and not just because they're want to be, like Dave said, a watchdog of it. The only other thing I'd add is I think as far as the authority's focus, if those kind of counties want to come on board, I think we can certainly entertain that. But as far as the authority's focus right now, on counties that aren't yet involved, our focus as far as recruiting any new counties needs to be really lasered in on those counties that are actually on the line.
Yeah, that makes sense, Jason. And Diane, did you have a follow-up comment?
I did. I just wanted to say that I had not approached our commissioners yet. I was kind of waiting for this meeting to see what the outcome was before I talked to them. I also think Mineral County has a lot to offer as far as recreational areas, and getting, you know, a bus up through here would be incredible if it's not on the line. So I would just, as long as the county is interested, I would urge you guys to accept us.
Well, I think you have a green light to approach your county commissioners in Mineral County, and I would be more than happy to follow up with them if they have any questions. So thanks,
Great.
Diane.
Okay, I'll do that then. Thanks.
You bet. Kyla, did you have a comment?
Yeah, we just have a question here about the City of Dillon and Beaverhead County Commissioners, if anyone has reached out in regards to them joining.
Yes. Thanks for that question. As a matter of fact, multiple times, and I have not heard any word back from Beaverhead County. So if someone is participating today who would like to pitch to your county commissioners that Beaverhead be part of and petition the rail authority to be part of the authority, please do. They are directly on a potential north-south corridor to Salt Lake City, and I think they would be welcome to reach out to us. So thank you for that. Jason, did you have another comment, or is your hand just still up? Okay. We have a motion on the floor to accept the so-called latecomer resolution or expansion authority resolution. Any further discussion among the commission members? Authority members, excuse me. I'm already in that multi-state rail commission mode. So any public comment on the motion? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, please unmute and signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. I will transmit the language of the resolution to Carbon County. I would also say that, and we may not be in the position to cross this bridge today, but there are some costs involved in terms of public notice, statutory requirements for notice across all 12 counties. So the process will be that the individual county wanting to participate in the authority will go through their own noticing and public comment, public process to adopt a resolution, much like all of the 12-member counties did leading up to the joint resolution. That, assuming that that resolution is adopted in that additional county, they'll transmit it to us, and then we need to adopt a subsequent resolution by state law accepting them into the authority. And it's at that point that that would need to be publicized across the 12 counties or 13 counties if there's another one coming on board. So we might want to think through at some point if there's an opportunity to have maybe an open season for new counties coming on board. Otherwise, we could end up being in a position of doing this completely piecemeal and spending a good bit of money having to advertise this again and again, assuming that we've got multiple counties coming on board. But for the time being, I say that we take those who are willing to come before us, and I know that Carbon is, and I would hate to deny them the opportunity to join. Let's move on to the next really quick item. We discussed last time establishing a principal office location just for the sake of administration and concentrating where folks will be reaching out to if they need to address the authority or contact the authority. And we determined that it would be here in Missoula for the time being, at least. So in your agenda, we have both the mailing address and a contact phone number for the rail authority based out of Missoula and the Board of County Commissioners office here. Moving on to new business, I had two items. One is related to what John Robert Smith and John Spain referenced earlier in terms of these multi-state rail commissions. And it sounds like that our members of Congress, by way of our two senators, are supportive of federal legislation that would indeed authorize states to enter into a multi-state rail commission. The real kicker here, though, is that we're in a position in Montana where we have a state legislature that only meets every other year. So we're a little out of sync with Congress in that by the time Congress acts, perhaps in a few months from now, our legislature will be about ready to wrap up or already adjourned. And what would be required is enabling legislation for states to partake in one of these multi-state rail commissions. So we would be in a position of essentially preemptively having our legislature adopt enabling legislation for an act of Congress that is forthcoming but has not yet occurred. I have worked with John Robert Smith, who was on the line earlier, to draft some potential enabling legislation. It is being reviewed by legal counsel and legislative services at the state of Montana. And I am in the process of looking for a bill sponsor somewhere in the state who would carry this. And so if any of you out there on the line among the 12 counties, and unfortunately I did not have the draft legislation ready for this meeting, I will distribute it via email. But if any of you know of legislators in your respective counties who could potentially carry this, please let me know. Time is kind of the essence here. And it would not be the end of the world if we did not get this over the finish line this session, but it would sure be nice to set ourselves up for success if Congress ends up acting. Any questions on that or comments? Terry Jennings.
Thank you, Commissioner. I probably do have a legislator that would be interested in carrying this. He's very supportive of this. Could I let him contact you directly?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, I will do so. Thank you.
You bet. Jason Stewart?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Anderson over in Webo knows that I have already attempted to make contact with our legislators who represent both Dawson and Webo counties, and that has not proven fruitful. So I just didn't want him to be duplicating efforts that have already been made.
Thanks,
got
Jason.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry McDonald?
Yes, thanks. I want to let you know that on the other side of the state, we've been trying to ask our both Senator Brown and Representative Logie to please, introduce or sponsor this legislation. I'm not certain where they are with that, but I know that they've been spoken to by county commissioners. And of course, we have a representative of the governor's office aboard today. I would certainly, would expect that Mr. Capice would be interested in this kind of, enabling legislation that would further us along the line of economic development. Thanks.
Thank you. And I have reached out to Sonny also to alert him to this effort, and we would certainly appreciate support from the governor's office because between that and our U.S. senators both being supportive of this, I think that's a strong statement. Kyla and then Diane.
There's a question. Is Andrea Olson still representing Missoula County? She would be a logical choice to sponsor the Enabling Act.
Yes, actually, I have been working with Andrea. She is the placeholder legislator who is helping with this. But I also think that it would, to get this over the finish line, it's going to require some broader bipartisan support across the state. So that's essentially what we're looking for right now, but good comment. Thank you. Diane?
I know I'm not on the board, but Denley Logie is representative for Mineral County and the eastern part of Sanders County. And I know that he thought that this should be handled by local governments and local entities, but he also he's also the chair of the Transportation Committee, I believe. So I don't know if somebody should talk. I mean, I'd be glad to talk to him, but maybe somebody else should.
Well, it looks like Jerry McDonald from who's our Sanders County representative has been trying to work those angles. So, but it certainly doesn't hurt for additional constituents to let their representative know what they think. Thanks, Diane. Jerry, do you just have your hand up from previously? Okay, thank you. And I know we are running a little bit behind schedule from when I had hoped to adjourn at 10:30. Are board directors okay with just going a few minutes beyond to wrap up what we have on the agenda? Okay. Thank you. So if after this meeting, any other directors have thoughts as far as legislators in your counties to reach out to, please let me know. And I'll also distribute that draft language, that bill draft language to you all. The next, is there any other public comment on this item at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our final new business item. Jerry McDonald referenced this earlier. This grows out of a perceived and I think a real need that as part of any future analysis of the Rail Commission and of looking at reestablishing passenger rail service, that include a socioeconomic study that would not just focus on how much is this going to cost to restore passenger rail service, but the equally important question of what are the economic benefits that this will bring to our communities throughout southern Montana and actually to points beyond also. A number of us had the opportunity to chat with a representative from the Rail Passengers Association recently who does this sort of analysis and study. They have several different tiers or levels of analysis that they do. For the most in-depth analysis, a ballpark figure is approximately $65,000 to conduct one of these studies. And what we discussed in the Finance Committee, and Jerry, feel free to elaborate here if you want, is, and one of the reasons why this is somewhat time sensitive and before the board right now, is that in the month of March, there's a deadline for Big Sky Economic Development Trust Fund planning grant dollars. And those do require a match, and those planning grants are up to $25,000. It's a 1-to-1 match. If we thought this was a viable path forward and wanted to try to do some fundraising to raise the dollars for this, we would need to get cracking somewhat soon. I might have my sights on some potential matching dollars through our local metropolitan planning organization and planning funds that we have, but we just wanted to bring this forward. And again, it's this matter of trying to create the architecture and the superstructure for the authority at the same time as opportunities are coming down the pike that we would probably not want to let slip through the cracks. Jerry, did you want to say anything more?
Sure. Just elaborate a little bit on the discussion in the Finance Committee. We know that these types of studies need to be fresh, and we know that they are required in order for us to be able to fulfill our obligations, kind of a fiduciary responsibility. So what we decided to do, or what we voted unanimously to authorize out of finance, was a request for authorization of fundraising. We need to know that we have the money in place before we can spend it. And so what we've done is, in this case, created this request to this full board for authorization of fundraising. We want to go out and represent ourselves, reaching out to cash. Now, we are a little bit hamstrung in that we don't have bylaws that specifically define the kind of funds that from the private sector that we can accept. We would request that in this authorization that the full board grant us some leeway to make immediate decision, recognizing that private contributions need to have a kind of an attachment that says, hey, we're not doing this for to get special access or otherwise, and just leave that up to the fundraising committee, if you will, some discretion of operation until we get those bylaws firmly in place is what we can accept. So I'd enter put the proposal on the floor that this full board authorize fundraising for this, earmarked for this socioeconomic study. And as it's described, in new business, very, very aptly.
Thank you, Jerry. That motion is in order, and I should also note that in your electronic packets, you received some further description and explanation of what a study like this would mean, and also recognizing that we are bound by procurement law in the state of Montana, such that this may or may not be a sole source sort of thing. We would likely have to do some sort of a limited solicitation. So anyway, we have a motion on the floor. Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. Discussion. And this isn't obligating us to spend any money that we don't have. It's authorizing us to embark on fundraising. Is there any public comment on the motion to authorize fundraising for a socioeconomic study? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please unmute yourself and signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. We'll get the Finance Committee will get cracking on that. Any general comments from the board members? Well, I will just say how pleased I am with not only the remarkable attendance at today's authority board meeting, but just the enthusiasm that each of you have brought to this mission. And for those out there who have stepped up to chair our subcommittees, thank you so very much. Any other, we have a Charles Jingling on, and I may be mispronouncing your name. Charles, do you want to speak to us?
Yes, I do. And you are one of the few people that actually pronounce it correctly. So thank you. I live in Ritzville, Washington. And of course, this is the same route as Old North Coast Limit, Northern Pacific we're talking about. And there was a study proposed in the state of Washington, Seattle, Spokane, going on this route through Ritzville. And of course, this town of Ritzville is interested in a stop. But we're also thinking like this train going to Sandpoint and would be going on the same route you guys are thinking about. And we'd like to be a part of this. And I'm here to offer whatever services I can from where I'm at. So you have my email address, and let me know if I can help.
Thank you very much. And absolutely our planning, a strategic planning subcommittee will be grappling with, and the full board, with some of those very questions as far as the corridor and partnerships with adjoining states. And I have been looping in All Aboard Washington and some of their representatives to our efforts, and I've sensed a strong level of participation and collaboration there. So thanks, Charles. Kim Whitmore.
Unmute. Oh, hi, Dave. I just reached out on Facebook. I'm in San Diego. Don't hold that against me, everyone. I'm not from here. I posted your excerpt saying, in a world of hardened political ideology, ... I put it in Amtrak Fans yesterday and got 106 reactions and 15 comments. I'm going to send you these screenshots, and I'll offer to Jason, I'll help you all with social media and digital marketing from here if I can. And then I put it in the Amtrak Unlimited group and it got 10 shares. So my guess is just a single post from a random person in 2 Amtrak groups drew people to this meeting today, including myself. And I was so moved by your quote that I had to attend. So I am here to support your efforts in any way that I can. I have advanced certificate in digital marketing. I could do crowdfunding. I could do social media posts with your approval, with the committee's approval. So I just wanted to say I'm all in, and you probably know this from your background, but I just found the airport study, the economic impact study, which yes, was from 2016, for Montana, but there might be a pony in there or something that we can reuse. I also was on the rail passengers call that was specific to looking at the universities and seeing if there was any talent to help with these socioeconomic studies. And my very last comment is there is money in APRICO. So if we can find a private rail car owner who is so wanting to attach his or her private rail car to Amtrak and start traveling again, that they might be a source of funds. I mean, we have the Patron Express and other things, and I know Jim Matthews and others have not gone to APRICO in the past to ask for money, but I think we could find money for Montana from APRICO members, and someone that I know here in San Diego is a member, so I'm going to ask. But I don't want to do anything that's not approved. So I could take it offline, but I just wanted to offer my help.
Well, thanks so much, Kim. I think we will probably be following up with you because we will absolutely take assistance and support and help anywhere around the globe, whether it's Portugal or San Diego. I think we all have a vested interest in our success and an enhanced transportation system in this country. So thanks so much. All right, we're going to have to move on, and that will be it for public comment there. But thank you so much, Kim and Charles. Anything else that we need to get on the table here as either an unscheduled item today to discuss or something that we would want to put on the agenda for our next meeting? And I also put in the chat for folks to take a look at. Since we last convened, we were also featured in the New York Times, and that, to say the least, lit up my email inbox and my voicemail on my phone. As was Terry Jennings. You were in that story. I think you even had a photograph of yourself. So good work. We've been drawing a lot of attention nationally, and that is, I think, a strong indication of the hard work and commitment that all of you have out there on the line today. One final item is an idea for our next meeting of the full board. We have an offer, standing offer from Rob Eaton with Amtrak. He gave a brief overview at our last meeting about Amtrak and its connection to the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. He's offered to do a more in-depth Railroading 101. And if that sounds of interest to folks, I would be more than happy to get that scheduled. I'm seeing a few head nods out there. Without any objection, I will move forward in getting that scheduled. The last thing I would say, and this relates to scheduling these meetings, to say it's been herding cats to get 12 of us on the same page for a standing board meeting every month has been, that would be an understatement, and we'll keep at it. We have yet to land on a date that works for everyone, and I recognize that there may be months that not everyone will be able to meet, but we're at this point of pivoting from these every 2-week full board meetings to monthly board meetings interspersed with committee meetings. At some point, we might go to quarterly meetings for the full board, but we've got an awful lot of work to accomplish right now. So we'll be reaching out to you again. Kyla from my office will be reaching out to you again with some additional dates. And who knows, maybe we'll be meeting at that 9 p.m. hour. Maybe that would work for all of us. We'll see. Any final thoughts from the board? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. This was a great discussion. I hope folks enjoyed it. And without anything further of business for the board, I will call us adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.